Good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This video is all about building your investor prospect list and approaching investors, and is a follow-on to the 3-video series I recently created about raising early seed funding, and will provide more details behind some of the concepts presented in that video series. Now, you're here because your dreams cost money you don't have. And that's okay, because whether you're raising $100,000 or $1 million or even $10 million, your investor prospect list is the one thing that will take some of the work out of raising money. Now, if you don't make fundraising an essential part of your daily and weekly activities, you'll get jammed up and find yourself staring into the abyss. But with consistent fundraising attention and effort, you won't. The thing about early company building is that it's easy to run out of runway if you're not putting consistent effort into fundraising. And the only way to know where you're at is to track it. That way you can't lie to yourself about where you're actually at. You need to be thinking from day one, who might be a potential investor at the right time that I know or will meet in the coming days, weeks, and months? Or who is a potential connector to people who might invest? With every interaction you have with any individual, electronic, virtual, and especially in person, it goes into your investor prospect list, which is easily created in spreadsheets or most CRM software. Those spreadsheets or Google Sheets are preferred. Tracking where you are with each contact, what you have done, and when you need to touch them again. With all contact information on one page, you always need to be asking yourself one of two questions all the time, regardless of how or why you are meeting with anyone. Is this person a potential investor soon or in the future? Or might they know someone who would be? Any potential investor candidate or source goes into your list, so you can plan on how and when to approach them for the first time, or keep them moving down your investor funnel. Must have all your prospect data and tracking in one place to keep your information current and remind you of where you stand all the time. Of course, your investor prospect list is just the administrative tracking of your fundraising efforts. What is behind it is your preparation for having conversations with people. And at a minimum, you need to have ready a tagline that describes and or explains what your company is about, your elevator pitch, a succinct presentation captured in your pitch deck, and security documents so you can take their money. Some of you watching this may be thinking, do I really need all this just to start having conversations? And the answer is a resounding yes. How do you talk about your company without thinking through each of these items? What are you going to do if someone is interested? Say, well, let me get back to you when I have my act together? So let's briefly review each of these. You must have multiple concise ways of describing and explaining your business, beginning with a what we do in no more than 5 words, so that you have an immediate response to that question from anyone and use it to describe what your company does. That's 90+% of the time will invite a follow-up question from whoever you're talking to. And that's where your 20-second max elevator explanation comes in. So when you say, we're a software development company, and they follow up with, what kind of software do you develop? Now you go into a tiny bit of detail, the most exciting elements of the company, explained in a future tense framing. Some of you may be thinking, I can't tell our whole story in 3 minutes. And I would say back, well, then you have fluff in your story you need to take out. Force yourself to prioritize your words so that you can get the key elements of your story out in 3 minutes or less. Your 20-second elevator pitch should have already helped you to see what is most important. And building your pitch deck with a max of 10 slides will also help you to prioritize. Now, there are tons of resources you can find online for developing a pitch deck, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. The success of the pitch deck is always in the first 3 to 4 slides, especially the first slide. You must be able to get the prospective investor hooked right away. One of the resources for this that I like the best is on Stripe.com, where they talk about the different pitch deck plots and thinking in acts, not slides. If you aren't experienced in pitch decks, this is a good resource to start with. Now let's consider 5 example plots and the beats of the plot that build on each other as you explain. Starting over is one of the common plots and represents several of the companies I have started. Many investors like to make bold bets. Few wagers are more daring than reinventing a market from the ground up. This plot unleashes the gale of creative destruction through which an industry evolves by leveling and recreating itself. Here is another common plot, doing that over here, comparing your startup to a successful company. A precise and powerful analogy goes a long way, especially when your analogs are valued in the billion-dollar-plus range. This is particularly useful choice when your investors are not already intimately familiar with your market. Another plot line, but here's the thing. This is less of a plot line than it is a rhetorical device, but it can be an incredibly effective way to open a pitch. If your goal is to convince an investor that you are the best person to solve a problem, then the best thing you can do is to demonstrate that you understand the problem better than anyone else. Or this plot, all the kids are doing it. One of the biggest challenges in any pitch is demonstrating differentiation. To do so, show how your offering is sparking undeniably new customer behavior or uniquely benefiting from it. And lastly, this plot. I took it personally. Investors are looking for founders who dedicate their lives to solving a problem, which means it's incredibly powerful if you can speak to how that problem has impacted you personally. So you share your personal story of struggle and how that drove you to what you are creating. Now, I'm not going to play lawyer and explain all the documents you should have already had your attorney prepare before you start talking to investors. Some may argue, why do I need to spend money on attorneys before I raise much funding? My answer back is, and what are you going to do when someone is ready to give you a check? Say, well, let me get back to you in a few days? So in addition to your corporate documents, you should already have your own stock plan and capitalization table. But you need an investor questionnaire they fill out and sign to document that they are an accredited investor. And if you're raising money under a convertible note, you need a purchase agreement and a promissory note. Or if you're raising money under a SAFE contract, you need the appropriate agreement with the terms you want. I imagine some of the people watching this were hoping I would provide tips for how to have conversations with prospects. But really, this is not about sales or how to have conversations with people. This is about how to prepare yourself to talk effectively about your company with those who might be interested, and how to work your explanations into conversations you have with anyone you meet. Your innate passion and prepared responses will take over as you engage. One tip I would give you if you're new to raising funding or just starting a new round is don't start with the big dog. Warm up with the lower percentage targets on your list first to find your way. The more people you meet with, the more comfortable you will become talking about your company. Another approach which some people say don't do, but I think that only really applies to experienced investors, not if you're trying to raise money from friends and MLE investors, is to set up a meeting based on getting their feedback on what you're building. You should be wanting to get as much feedback as possible as you build your company anyway. If your meeting goes poorly, you can thank them for their input and be on your way. No harm, no foul. If the meeting goes well, you can finish with, is this something you might be interested in investing in? If you ask that question and the response is no, your follow-up is, do you know someone who might be interested? And get an introduction. That's another way to build your investor prospect list. Okay, that wraps up this follow-on video, which I hope has given you some ideas for preparing and escalating your seed funding campaign. Be sure to check out the next video when I post it, where I'll talk about how to find MLE investors and ways of approaching them when you do. And in a later video, when I create it, I'll talk about how to propose and structure your offering. May God bless your work, you, your family, and keep you safe. Peace out.